What if the greatest knowledge humanity ever received was forbidden long before the flood? Long before Moses or Abraham, a mysterious group of divine beings descended to earth. They were known not as demons, nor as gods, but as watchers. According to the ancient Book of Enoch, these celestial beings were meant to observe. That was their divine task, nothing more. But what happens when those sent to watch begin to interfere? The watchers fell not in battle, but in desire. They looked upon human women and lusted after them. And in secret, they made a pact on Mount Hermon. 200 angels swore to defy heaven and take mortal wives. This single act would change the course of human history forever. Their union brought forth children unlike anything the earth had seen. Giants, creatures of immense size and strength, but more than that, beings with corrupted souls. But that was not their only sin. The Watchers taught humanity what they were never meant to know: secrets from heaven, metalworking and weapons, enchantments and sorcery, astrology and the movement of stars. One named Azazel taught men how to make swords and women how to paint their faces with makeup. Another, named Semyaza, led the rebellion and revealed how to summon spirits. Knowledge turned into corruption. Power turned into chaos. The earth groaned under the weight of bloodshed and sin, and the cries of the innocent reached the throne of the Most High. This was not simply a fall, it was a full-scale contamination of the divine order. According to Enoch, God sent archangels to intervene. Raphael was commanded to bind Azazel and cast him into the desert. Gabriel was sent to destroy the Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers. Michael was to warn Noah of the coming judgment. What followed was a flood, not just of water, but of cleansing. The Watchers were imprisoned in the deepest abysses, chained in darkness until the day of judgment. Their children, the Nephilim, were wiped from the face of the earth, but their knowledge, their influence, echoes still. What if the most terrifying creatures in history were not myths, but mistakes of angels? The children of the Watchers were not ordinary. They were called Nephilim, a word whose very origin speaks of collapse. Some say it means giants. Others say it means the fallen ones. Either way, they were beings that should not have existed. Born from the union of heavenly watchers and mortal women, the Nephilim were abominations. They had the strength of angels, the instincts of men, and the corruption of both. According to the Book of Enoch, they devoured all the food on earth, and when there was nothing left, they began to devour mankind. These weren't just oversized humans, they were monsters, and their size wasn't the only threat. They were born into power. They ruled over men, not just by strength, but by terror. Some traditions say they taught war and bloodshed, sorcery and idolatry. They enslaved the people of earth, corrupted the animals, and desecrated the natural order. Even worse, they remembered heaven. The Nephilim knew what mankind was never meant to know. Their fathers, the Watchers, had passed on divine knowledge, how to manipulate nature, summon spirits, twist metals into weapons, and unlock secrets. Buried in the stars, they became kings, tyrants, men of renown, as Genesis puts it. But their greatness was not glory, it was destruction. The earth cried out. Genesis 6-5 says, "Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The Nephilim had infected creation, and God had seen enough. The judgment begins according to the Book of Enoch. God's justice was swift and precise. He summoned his holy angels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, and gave them terrifying commands. Bind Azazel, the corrupter, and cast him into a pit. Destroy the Nephilim by turning them against one another in battle. Cleanse the earth with a mighty flood. The Nephilim were wiped from the earth. The Watchers who birthed them were chained in darkness. Their spiritual rebellion became a cosmic warning. Not all knowledge is good. Not all wisdom is meant to be shared. But here's the mystery that refuses to die. Did any Nephilim survive? Genesis 6-4 mentions them being on the earth in those days and also afterward. The flood was supposed to erase them. Yet when the Israelites scouted the land of Canaan in Numbers 13-33, they reported, "We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes." Could the bloodline have continued through wives on the ark? Could spiritual influences have returned to corrupt future generations? Many ancient traditions, including Jewish and early Christian, Texts suggest the Nephilim may have resurfaced perhaps in other forms, under other names. Echoes through time, Nephilim became legend but not fiction. Cultures around the world echo their presence. The Greek Titans, offspring of gods and mortals. The Sumerian Apocryphal, semi-divine sages drowned in a great flood. The Hindu Danavas, giant beings born from gods and human women. Across continents, the pattern repeats. Divine beings descend, create hybrids, corrupt the earth, and are destroyed by a cataclysm. What if they're all remembering the same thing? In the shadows, still flood ended an era, but didn't erase the memory. Giants appear again in the Bible: Goliath, Og of Bashan, and the Anakim. The land of Canaan was said to be infested with them. Why was Israel commanded to destroy every man, woman, and child in some places? Could it be that God wasn't just ordering war but purification? Even today, some researchers suggest traces of the Nephilim may linger in ancient architecture, forbidden archaeology, or strange bloodlines. Were the Watchers and their children truly wiped out, or are they just sleeping? What if the angels who fell are not dead, but waiting? The Watchers, the heavenly beings who descended to earth and corrupted mankind, were punished, but not destroyed. According to the Book of Enoch, God commanded his archangels to bind the Watchers and imprison them beneath the earth, in darkness, in a place far from light, until the day of final judgment. Bind them for 70 generations beneath the hills of the earth. Book of Enoch 10:12. But what happens when that time is up? What if the punishment had an expiration date? The abyss and the chains of darkness, Jude 1-6, refers to angels who did not keep their own domain, but abandoned their proper dwelling. These beings, Jude says, are now kept in eternal chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. Peter says the same. God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them into Tartarus. Tartarus was the Greek term for the deepest abyss, a prison beneath even Hades. The Bible doesn't give much more detail, but the ancient texts do. Enoch says these beings are conscious, imprisoned in torment, and aware of their final fate. They cry out to Enoch, begging him to intercede, but God refuses mercy. Their corruption was too great. Yet, if they are still bound, what happens at the end of days? Revelation, the return of the abyss. Book of Revelation paints a disturbing image. Then I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. Smoke rose from it like smoke from a gigantic furnace, and out of the smoke, locusts came down upon the earth. Revelation 9:1-3. These are no ordinary locusts. They are described as creatures with faces like men, hair like women, teeth like lions, wings that thunder like horses and chariots, and they are released from the abyss. Many believe these are not insects, but ancient spirits, perhaps even the spirits of the Nephilim or the Watchers themselves, unleashed in the final judgment to torment mankind once more. Revelation 9:11 gives them a king, Abaddon in Hebrew, or Apollyon in Greek. Both names mean the destroyer. Some scholars think this may be a symbolic image. Others believe it's literal, the return of ancient powers that once nearly destroyed creation. Why does this matter today? It's easy to think of the Watchers and Nephilim as part of a distant myth buried under layers of history, forgotten, dismissed. But the themes of their story have never left us. The desire to surpass human limits, the temptation to unlock forbidden knowledge, the consequences of spiritual rebellion. In our modern world, we explore genetics, AI, and metaphysical experiments with increasing boldness. Many wonder, are we on the edge of another kind of fall? What if the ancient boundaries are growing thin? What if the days of Noah are returning, not through water this time, but through something more invisible and more invasive? Echoes in every culture. In Islam, fallen beings called Iblis and Shaitan rebel against God and influence mankind. In Greek myths, titans and giants war with the gods and are cast into Tartarus. In Mesopotamian lore, Apocryphal, part human, part divine sages are banished after the flood. Could all these stories be fractured memories of the same event? Were they not just myths but shadows of a shared trauma, a spiritual rebellion that once split heaven from earth? The final judgment, whether literal or symbolic, the Watcher's tale ends with judgment, not just theirs but ours. Enoch was told to write down everything he saw, not for his generation, but for ours, the generation of the last days. The book of Daniel speaks of a time when knowledge will increase and the sealed books will be opened. Revelation speaks of beasts rising from the earth and the sea, of false prophets performing signs, of deception so powerful it could deceive even the elect, and in the center of it all, ancient spirits, awakening, conclusion, a warning. A cross-time story of the Watchers and the Nephilim is more than just ancient legend. It's a spiritual fault line running beneath human history that we ignore it because it's uncomfortable. We silence it because it doesn't fit our theology. But perhaps it's the key to understanding the origin of evil, the severity of the flood, and the depth of spiritual warfare still being waged today. They came once, they fell, they were bound. And one day they may return. Subscribe for more biblical mysteries and ancient revelations. The voice of the Bible, where the Word speaks.